Greetings and salutations. This is Abe Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth. We may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also become a bitter pill at patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. Today, I've got a guest. We're going to call her Simone Randall. Simone works in staffing for a major tech firm, and we're going to talk about several different issues involving employment and job numbers and all that kind of stuff. Simone, how you doing this morning?
I am doing wonderful. I'm excited to be here and have a conversation with you. I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, you don't have to wait. We're here. So here we are. Yeah. So let's just kind of take a couple minutes, and obviously, I don't want to get you in trouble with who you work for, which is why we're going to call you Simone. But how about a little bit of background, kind of how you ended up where you're at and how you got to Austin and all that kind of thing?
Sure, of course. Well, for me, I initially started in nonprofit, so I did a lot of things surrounding around like domestic violence and also doing things to empower lower income communities. And by one of my former colleagues, he ended up saying, I think it would be great if you could come work with me, work in higher education, which I did. And I ended up working in higher education, empowering college students along the way, but also helping them with finding jobs and what they were passionate about and things of that nature, and also diversity as well. And within that, I said, you know what, this is great in me doing this, but I would love to do this for an even higher scale. And so I found myself working in staffing and being able to make sure that I feel like all voices are heard in staffing, that we're bringing people that are representative of our American communities, regardless of what that looks like. So,
okay. So, and when you say staffing, you're responsible for the various the positions?
Yes.
Okay.
So, various hiring positions. I work with a lot of different partners, making sure that not only are we looking at viable candidates, but also that we're making sure the process is very clear and blank and to the point, to where we're engaging more people. So it's not like, oh, we're just looking at this particular resume or this particular candidate, and we just accept whoever. No, we're very intentional about who we're bringing onto the workforce.
Well, especially with tech, I would imagine, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and that being said, yesterday I had recorded a young lady who's going to be airing, I think, on Monday, and we talked about education, state of education. Donald Trump likes to talk about minority numbers and unemployment going down, and frankly, the argument that I've been making for 20 years is, the same numbers that Obama had, the same numbers that Bush had. We're not really productivity's gone up 77%, but the minimum wage doesn't reflect productivity. The minimum wage, if you're reflecting productivity, should be about $20 an hour. It is not. And Donald Trump specifically likes to make the point that black and brown people, their unemployment numbers are about 4% right now compared to where it was. But I want to know kind of, what does that number reflect? Am I being negative when I say that's mostly Taco Bell and Walmart jobs? Because that's kind of the numbers that's always been. When Obama had all these great jobs, it was all, we lost a lot in the crash at the end of Bush, and Obama was bringing jobs back. No, the guys that lost their jobs are now working at Taco Bell. That's not exactly, So, I mean, I could be wrong, but
well, first let's deal with some of the numbers. I know for African Americans, the current rate is at 6.8%, while Hispanics, Latinx is at like 4.9%. And you're absolutely right as far as the fact that this didn't just happen overnight and did not happen under Trump presidency. This has been on the decline since 2010. I think it gave a little bit as far as some of my research. And one thing, especially when we're looking at like lower wage jobs, so we have unemployment versus underemployment, which we're finding a lot of Americans in that underemployment realm. And what that means is you're not working at the type of job that your level of experience or education or however that falls in to make you. You're not working in that capacity. So you're underemployed. Okay. And so it was something to me that as I was looking, especially particularly with outsourcing, that America now is doing a lot of domestic outsourcing. So instead of saying we're going to bring you in as a full-time employee, we're actually going to bring you in as a contractor. where you may or may not have benefits, you may or may not have access to training and skills that would then help you to grow or to then find another position that will be more closely aligned to what you're doing. And so to me, that was a little disturbing to read that's happening. And so especially like when we're looking at some of these low wage jobs, it's not just African Americans, but also those that are falling into lower income as well. So those different kind of intersectionalities where you happen to see people getting Taco Bell. Again, if that's something that you have to do to pay your bills, by all means.
Well, I'm not mocking.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm just simply saying,
Yeah, by all means, do what you have to do. But is that to say that that's what you either went to school for, that's what you've trained for? So whether that's vocational and you didn't go into a traditional 4-year, whatever that looks like for you, if that's not where your skill set is, then yes, you're underemployed. And we are noticing that a lot. I was reading an article that's talked about to where a lot of the people that are having multiple jobs has decreased. However, a lot of the contract worker has increased to where, again, not having those benefits, not being able to get trained or have professional development is hurting them in the long run as far as what they can navigate for. And I always say, especially if you're in a low wage job, sometimes it can be hard to be what you don't see. I had a coworker tell me that one day. It's hard to be what you don't see. And if you're constantly in that, then how do you see yourself navigating for a higher skilled job? How do you then negotiate for a salary that's on par with your peers when you haven't been making that before? And that's not even getting into, like, again, the gap of women workers versus male workers or men workers, or what that looks like, 70 cents, I believe. I don't want to misquote that, but like 70 cents to the dollar. That's taking all of that into consideration. So it's not just like, we're saying underrepresented populations such as people of color, but women, lower income, all of that not being equal is a problem.
Well, I mean, I don't even want to necessarily focus on the race issue. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, more white people collect welfare than black people. That's just the fucking fact. So, like, you go to Minneapolis. The other night I was out and I met a black guy from Minneapolis. I was like, shit. It's like that Chris Rock joke. I thought it was just Prince and Kirby Puckett. I had no idea there was other black people in Minneapolis. Right. And we kidded about that. But the fact is, you got Eastern Kentucky, you got Southern Missouri, you got Mississippi. There's a ton of people. So it's not even just people of color, but it's people at almost of a similar skill set. If they were trained, for vocational, not necessarily vocational, but the mechanics and manufacturing and things like that. Right.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that. And of course, I'm looking for this in my notes, but I'm not seeing it. That was in one of the articles that I was reading. It was saying that, they were looking at, it may not necessarily be that the numbers were that great for people of color as far as like the decline. It could be the fact that you're having so many whites in rural areas that are having a hard time finding jobs, that are having a hard time, which may be showing that kind of differential in that gap of how that's falling and pulling that back down. Like, we may not be realizing the severity of what this unemployment is looking like. So
Sure. Well, see, and that's the thing is, like, one of the things that kind of that really frustrates me when people talk about, the mechanic or the manufacturing jobs aren't going to come back. Right. And I get that. The genie's out of the bottle. Since 1961, when Kennedy made overseas manufacturing legal, because it used to be illegal up until 1961, and Kennedy allowed for a 5% quota at the Department of Labor. But every president of both parties has increased that every year. To when Bill Clinton comes in 1992, 93, he gets NAFTA passed, which Bush and Reagan couldn't pass, which is interesting that Clinton passed something that, I thought you were a liberal. Okay.
Right. But
that's another hour. I did one by myself called How the Left Was Lost. Okay?
Right.
You can listen to that. But in all seriousness, though, so by the time Clinton came in office, we were at like 80% of our jobs were already gone overseas. So one of the things that when Obama ran in 2008, that I got excited about, but it turned out to be bullshit, but was the fact that he was promising a new solar mecca, right? All these little towns that got destroyed, not even little, Anderson, Indiana, Detroit, Michigan, Camden, New Jersey, we're going to, make them, manufacturing solar. And that's like a good 20, 30 years of jobs before they start figuring out that India could do it cheaper and start sending those jobs overseas. But at least you got 20, 30 years of an industry. That didn't happen. So what are your observations in terms of what kind of industries can we create to employ these folks? I mean, because that is the kind of the crux of the problem is folks are, like you said, underemployed. not doing meaningful work.
Right.
And I don't mean like writing a book, but I mean just like when you're part of a assembly line or whatever, the interviews I've seen with guys that used to have good jobs, they're like, you felt like you're part of something. The car rolled off the lot after half an hour, right? And so like what are you seeing in terms of that kind of job creation?
Well, and some of the things that we were looking at is, of course, it's not just particularly what's going to be popular in America, but just popular in the world, was one when we talked about, of course, renewable energy, solar and wind power. I think that's at the current worth is going to be like $1.3 billion. Next is cybersecurity. Again, the more that we're putting a lot of our data online, the more that we are engaging in like Bitcoin and all these things that we need to have security for. And get this, by 2023, that particular field is going to be worth $165.2 billion. So how do we start training people on how to do that? Especially if this is where we move, and how do we make sure that we're offering these particular courses, again, not just only at a 4-year level, but at vocational? How are we doing this within high school to get students engaged and excited about how are we offering classes within the communities? The next one is, of course, biotechnology, which is at, by 2025, $727.1 billion of worth. And that's going to be able to generate higher crop yields as we're having more people coming along, right? And this is something I didn't know. It's a possibility to cure genetic diseases by manipulating genes. I was like, what? I didn't know that. So we're looking at all these things of where the future is going to be. How are we doing that? Are we still looking at, this is the way that we've always done in America, so this is what we should do, versus no, we got to catch up with the times, because there's going to be other countries in the world that are tackling some of these fields that we're talking about. How do we make sure that we're strong as an American power or as a world power as well? I think after that, 2 more is like virtual reality, of course, $14.1 billion. There's military that uses that to train. They're using it for mental health for patients that have phobias and fears. And then also artificial intelligence that can smell disease. And then one, which was a little morbid, like they could predict by like a 95.5% accuracy when you were going to die. I was like,
I'd like to know that.
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
No, I would. I'd party like it was 1999 for a while. If I knew next year was it, and there's a 95% chance, that's better than Vegas. Yeah.
Would it? I think
I'd sell all my crap and get an RV. Seriously.
And travel the world.
Yeah, I got a friend that does that. She does stand-up comedy, and she left L.A., and she actually makes money in the Midwest, and she's her and her dog, and she's all these pictures of her and her dog, just like, and just in an RV.
Well, and this is one of those things, too, but it raises a good point when you just said that, too, like being able to live in such a way that you're, again, pursuing your dreams, right? But then I'll go back to related to employment. Are we then empowering our workforce to be able to do that? Not the fact that you know when you're going to die, but just that you are having a fulfilling life. You're not just working to work, because I always say that if to me, it's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, if we're so worried about our basic needs, then we're not able to be creative. There's somewhere that's out here, there's a little kid that's able to figure out what a cure for any type of cancer could be, right? Or like all of these different things we're struggling with. But if we're not tapping into all of our communities in America, we're not getting that creative potential. That's not putting us ahead, because we're saying, if you only go to this Ivy League, if you only have a 4-year degree, if you only have this. No, there is discoveries and ideas and inventions that are possible that can lie in anybody in any community. How do we tap into that? That, to me, is what is going to make us go forward and be that top power. Sure.
Well, I mean, and this is kind of, and I was going to ask you this later, but I may as well ask it now. So when you're staffing in your industry specifically, obviously there's a lot of jobs. I mean,
right.
Like some of these tech companies have up to 20,000 engineers just to work on a search engine. So it's like, but where do you see that possibly lending itself to outsourcing?
As far as outsourcing to another country?
Like, can we do in tech as efficiently as, say, can we get it done in India as efficiently as we can in America?
What's interesting to me is that we actually are. So for what I'm staffing for, it is for the Americas. It's not for outside of anywhere else. And of course, there are different divisions for that. But it's so interesting because you'll see a lot of people apply from all over the world trying to come to work inside of America. So again, it's that perception of what we offer, right? That perception of that white picket fence and what you can gain if you come here, and all these different types of possibilities to be successful. You'll see a lot of people applying to try to come here to do that, particularly in staffing. But it's there. I think that it's not, when I look at a company, any company, it needs to be more than just what you do in staffing, right? Like, it needs to be, what ways are you being involved with your community? Are you having resume building workshops in your community? Are you teaching people how to tell their story in such a way that it is making it more of a marketable experience to be able to get you into a company? Now, that's not to say that that's solely on the solely responsibility of the person applying. That's not the case. I think that it is like being able to tell your story well, but I think it's also for the companies being able to learn that everyone tells their story in a different way. Sure. And what does that look like? So that way you're not just bringing in candidates that reflect who already work there. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, because if that's the case, that's why you have to have such diversity within a company. So that way you're bringing in people that not only look like you and them, but also don't, to make it more just a better workforce and environment. So that way we're asking these questions like you're doing. Like, how do we make sure that we're building up the communities that we're in? How do we make sure that we're helping the next generation to be able to be leaders and to be able to have these conversations? Because, to be quite frank, I'm putting a lot of weight on this future generation. I need for this to be better than what we're going through right now.
Oh, I'm doomed.
Right?
I'm 55 years old. I'm gonna be eating cat food.
No.
Oh yeah, I'm dead. Seriously, I almost ran over a kid on a Lime today. Coming down here. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Fucking idiot. She's like, la, 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 crossing a one-way street with no intersection. Just thinks she's got, because, I don't know, maybe mommy and daddy told her she was so special. I have no idea. But this is, and I know I'm turning into my father. I'm turning into my dad. These kids today, God damn. I'm turning into that guy. I don't want to be that guy. But when you almost hit 10 Lime scooters a week, and it's like, dude, you're not even looking. Like, you're 20-something. You've got a driver's license. You've probably had sex by now. You eat.
And you're not
just be like, and I'm on a Lime scooter. It's not a force field. You're not surrounded by this by Star Wars or it's a scooter. It's a razor with an electric motor. But that kind of common sense is kind of scaring me right now, or lack of.
But you know what I think it is too. Even with that, I think there's a part of, like, for you and I, we're both in that mindset that it's not about us, right? Like, we were raised like it's not about us. We're taught consistently it's not about us. But then when you have a younger generation coming up, sometimes it can be, oh no, it's about you. It's all about you. And you get in your own little world.
Yeah, but they didn't get that by themselves, though.
No,
I got a lot of friends my age who raised their kids.
Helicopter parents.
Right. And the attitude was, it was like this, if I could protect them, I don't want to have happen to them what happened to me.
Exactly.
And so they're going to ensure this perfect world, and you can't ensure a perfect world. It's like because shit happens.
Exactly.
You have your daughter being a gymnast, and she's going to go to some school and be in the Olympics and and you don't know that for years. In the safest, more hermetically sealed environment, the doctor was finagling about with your kid.
Exactly.
And not just your kid, but like 50 kids, and you're kind of going, God damn it. It's like, so how do you? But we've gotten like the last couple of generations of people, I think, since at least the 80s, where a lot of them are raised kind of like they're coddled, and they think the world just revolves around them. It's a cult of the self.
Right. And that's something, too, like exactly to your point. Not only are they coddled, not only are they doing this on American soil, like one of the things is I used to live abroad for like 4 years. I lived in a different country. And I would notice that living there. So expats, I would see them all the time, like having that kind of coddled mentality. Oh, like, you should do this for me. No one should do anything for you. It's a privilege for you to be in that country. It's not a privilege for them to serve you. And I think that that's something that we've got to break, just period. Because I see that too, especially with the birds and the limes and like everyone just kind of going in and out. But I also see that in regards to manners. Like, I've noticed a lot, like if I'm just at a mall and I'm getting on an escalator, people will cut me off. off. And I'm like, oh, you didn't see me walking
Yeah.
there? Like, you don't see me waiting? So I think some of that, just the nicety, we're missing a lot of that, just the courtesy, we're missing
Sure,
that.
absolutely.
So, and I'm not going to say necessarily that could just be a generation, but I think it's also, too, just how people are being raised. And
Well, I think it's also too how we're getting in culture. I mean, I think the last 10 years we've got the thing we have in common is the phone and the computer and everything else. And I think it's created just a block in people's head
Right.
where they could be passive aggressive. Before, the joke I used to make was if people behaved in the grocery store like they do driving, we'd have
Right.
a ton of rage shootings at the grocery store.
Right.
But people, they see your face. Oh, hey, excuse me. You move your cart. You're being polite, right? Mm-hmm. Now people just sort of act like you're not even there, like they're driving a car.
Right.
And I think so. I mean, I don't want to get down too far that rabbit hole, but I mean, the original point that I was working to make was, like kind of what you're seeing in staffing. And the reason I ask that is because I do employee benefits for my day job. Mm-hmm. So I've got a couple of companies that do silicon chips and chip manufacturing, right? And those jobs are well paying. They're not going to go anywhere for at least a while. Mm-hmm. And one HR lady told me this about 10 years ago. And the way she said it was real sinister.
Okay.
Because I was living in LA at the time, and these guys were in Phoenix. So me and my partner in Phoenix, and we're waiting for the thing to start and this and that. And she's all like, man, these people don't know it. But if we can get this shit done in India, we'll do it in a second. As soon as we can find it cheaper, we'll go to Pakistan. We don't care. But we can't guarantee the quality. Because if you're familiar with solar chips and those kind of things, when they're drying out, it's got to be hermetically sealed. Those guys are all in the bunny suits, right? In hazmat bunny suits. If a speck of dust gets on the disc, you just lost $30,000. So because you can't sell it. You can't sell it to NASA because if the sun reflects off it the wrong way and the dust is on there, everybody blows up. So it's got to be pristine. And you can guarantee that here. Mm-hmm. Can't guarantee it in China. Can't guarantee it in India. You can't guarantee it in Mexico. But once you get to a point where the technology is cheap and they can guarantee it, those jobs are gone. But that's another maybe 20, 30 years away. Like American car manufacturing. Nobody had any idea what was going to happen.
Right.
We thought it was going to last forever. Nobody had any idea when Kennedy allowed a 5% quota for overseas manufacturing, had any idea what was going to come down the pike. And within even a decade, it was obvious because management was already telling labor, well, fuck you. If you don't like it, you don't want to pay more for your benefits? Well, then we'll go to Mexico.
Right.
Or we'll go to China. We'll go to Japan. Japan's making a ton of cars cheap. We'll put a plant in Tokyo. So that's why I asked kind of like what kind of jobs do you think, or what kind of industries do you think we can create? And what you see in tech, for example, because if we can outsource it, my feeling is that we will if we can guarantee the quality. Is that too dumb to think?
No, I don't think it's too dumb to think. I think that is the nature sometimes dealing with companies and capitalism is how can we do things cheaper but still keep the quality at a safe enough level. I haven't necessarily noticed in my particular current position that piece, but I have noticed it at other places. And something to me that always – not necessarily is a little triggering is that we don't mind. We're saying, oh, well, we can't. We have these type of like workplace regulations, these type of health regulations of things that we can't push people. But we're okay with doing that in a different country, knowing that what those employees are kind of not really being paid to do and to have to deal with and to have to like put out and produce within so many hours. They're having to do all of these things that we're saying that, but we can just outsource it. But yeah, the thing is it's not necessarily increasing that community over there either. Are you getting the work done? Yes. Are you getting it done at a fair amount? Yes. But are those workers being paid a very valuable amount? It may be more than what they're receiving due to that economy, but it's not necessarily in comparison to what they should be making. And it doesn't necessarily mean the work conditions are what they should be. So sometimes when I hear that, it's more like, oh, we're outsourcing all these jobs. But I'm also listening to that human context. How is that also helping those communities? Because then it's not about us. Then it's not about them. It's about the bottom line. It's about that bottom dollar. And then how do we hold those companies to be accountable for that? Because I think that there is a way. And again, I don't know the solution, but I think that there is a way for us to be able to dive into these particular fields and to be able also to partner and collaborate with other countries in a way that it doesn't steal or take away from what we're doing or for them, but it also builds us up as global citizens. I think that is something that we need to focus on and do. That is a very idealistic, is very kind of like Pollyanna, but that's just kind of who I am. And I think that that's something that we need to look at.
But you're in business, so why would that be Pollyanna? I mean, you're in a business. You see numbers. Why would that be Pollyanna?
Well, because sometimes people will say, well, oh, that just sounds too nice. I said, no, but for me, I've realized, especially growing up and having the type of parents I did and grandparents that I had, that you'll likely get people to become loyal and hardworking if they feel valued, if they feel joy, if they feel all these things that they should be feeling in their jobs, right? And you're able to produce much more, and you're also able to come up with more ideas. And so for me, in my mind, I think of how do we partner with other countries versus having this animosity, this tension of us versus them. Oh, well, if people come in, if people are taking our jobs, we don't have less jobs. Well, what does that look like? How are we making sure that all of us are being successful within America, but then we're also partnering? Because again, if we're able to partner with another country to come up with something that's going to help everyone, then we should do that.
Sure.
Right? But there are going to be kind of like, I say, like maybe opposite advocates or devil advocates voices that are going to be like, well, no, we shouldn't do that. We should just keep all the money here. We should just make sure everyone has what they need here. But we're not doing a good job of that anyway.
We suck at it. Well,
Exactly.
but this is where to play devil's advocate, to speak to that argument. That's what we did with NAFTA. That's what we did with, and Bill Clinton promised us that we're going to have more jobs in the States, and we didn't. I mean, that's why, when the states that Obama took in 08 and 12, because, Bush clearly wasn't doing anything about it. So he came in 2008 saying the right stuff, single payer and solar and, and jobs and da-da-da-da, and then didn't do any of it. So the states that he took, why Hillary lost them to the orange one, a couple of reasons. Well, one, because she didn't go there. That's kind of hard. I never seen somebody campaign on a campaign that you don't need to campaign. Like, I want your vote, but I'm not going to say anything or do anything to make you vote for me, but you should just vote for me.
Yeah,
and that's what
problems with her.
Well, yeah. Well, but see, that's what happened, though. And so she wouldn't go to Michigan. She wouldn't go to Wisconsin. She wouldn't go to states where they visibly saw the neoliberal failure that started with Reagan and went through Bush and Clinton and Bush and Obama and now Trump, because he's not doing anything different than the last five guys. So all that to say that, the devil's advocacy, I would like to have a total kumbaya with other countries, but capitalism as it's structured is predatory. So we're not going to sit there and make a deal with India. No, we're going to try to get the shit made in India.
Exactly.
And screw our people because it's cheaper to get cars made in Taipei or whatever. I mean, we're just not going to – we just keep trying to not we keep giving the tongue bath to corporate America as though they're going to be the salvation. If we let the free market run itself, all that Ayn Rand shit. And I'm sorry, for anybody listening, just so you don't know, Ayn Rand died on Medicare collecting Social Security. So Ayn Rand go fuck herself. Her and Alan Greenspan and goddamn Larry Summers, okay? Because it was all that free market, it'll correct itself. That's like saying I don't need any cops, because the criminals will correct themselves.
Right.
The guy in the rapey van, it's Thursday. I've raped enough this weekend. I'm going to let the market right itself. I'm going to let another guy go out and rape some more. And we don't need any cops then. That's a bad analogy, but
no, but you're right.
It's terrible.
Bad
oh my God, he's making jokes about rape. But but that's the thing is like we keep treating the great God capitalism like it can't fail. Yet it fails every 4 to 10 years.
Right, and I think that's the problem too. But it's something like exactly what you just. I mean, not the bad analogy, but exactly what you just said. As far as calling it out, we have to call bullshit. And it is talking about those particular capitalisms for us to saying, oh, we want this kind of kumbaya, this piece, but we're going to say that this avenue is the only way that it can provide it. No, you can't do that. To me, it's like we're saying that this is failing, but we're not doing our due diligence. It's almost like we're just saying we want these grand things to happen, but we're not doing anything to make it. We're just saying, well, this is a large enough company as the resources and finances to be able to do it. We'll just let them make the decision. We'll just let them decide what's best for us. No. And I would say that too, again, to me, it's a matter of, yes, you can have all these jobs and we can create them, but if you haven't trained our workforce how to do that or how to even think, and it's something that, I've looked at it before, especially priorly working in education. We have to train people how to be problem solvers and how to be critical thinkers, not just how to train a person to a job. Because then if the job goes away, then they're not able to market themselves or to kind of position themselves in such a way that they are problem solvers, that anything that comes along, they can figure out how to do that. And that's something that we need to do. And we don't do exactly what all these different fields we're looking at. Have you heard anything being taught That's part of our curriculum that will probably be provided in some of our school systems. And again, I want to preface this because I have a lot of friends that are teachers. They're already bombarded with things to do and having to teach to a test and not necessarily teach to.
Well, it's not their fault. The system sucks.
Exactly.
No, I get it.
Like,
I got a lot of friends that are teachers.
Right?
I taught school.
Exactly. So I always want to make that preface. But when you look at all of those different things and you look at guardians and things like that, they're having to work multiple jobs to be able to provide for their family. And then not having the time to be able to say, let me venture with you even more, child or whoever, to try to help you think about what things you would like to do and what problems there are and how you would solve them. So I think that we put all of that weight on the company, but we also need to hold them accountable. And we also need to, as a community, say, this is what success looks like for America. This is how we're going to tackle this and have this, and I'm giving an example, in the school system. This is what types of programs that we're going to have available to be able to train our workforce. This is what we're going to offer. I'm not saying that we're not completely doing that, but it's happening so spread out that you're either not hearing about it or it's not building up enough traction for it to be something on a larger scale.
Well, I mean, we're not. Listen, we don't ask good questions as a culture. The average American has contributed $3,400 to defense. And I won't even say defense, I'll say military because we ain't defending shit, as Gary Johnson likes to say. We're not defending shit. We're just everywhere.
Right.
And it's corporate welfare. We're paying the military for shit that we don't need. Even the Pentagon doesn't want it. But the Defense Department's like, oh, well, we got it. And the Pentagon's like, well, we don't want it. I mean, they got some dopey battleship aircraft carrier about 6 years ago. It's $13 billion. And the Pentagon's like, dude, we got plenty of battle. We're cool. Defense Department, no, you need it. No, we don't. But $13 billion, that puts 1.5 million kids through college. And back in the day, and people hate when I say this because it's the fucking truth, but college was free. I went for free. Cal Poly Pomona, where I graduated, is now $5,000 a quarter. It was $100 a quarter when I graduated in 1987. My cousin, who's older than me, went to UCLA for free. Not because he was special or smart. He had the grades. He got in. He went to the law school for free. He didn't pay to go to UCLA Law School. That's why they had a wait list, because it was free. The entire UC system in California was free. Cal State system was free. And people act like I want a pony. It's $70 billion a year to put people through college. Trump last year and this year got an $80 billion tip on top of his defense budget. All right? Nobody asked any questions about that extra $80 billion. The Democrats voted for it too, right? Especially the ones in the Senate. Not a single Democrat said no, including Bernie Sanders, who will never say no to a defense bill because he's from Vermont. Okay? Right. So, but all that to say, $70 billion to pay for college. Oh my God, how are we going to pay for that? $70 billion to give Trump, who's supposed to be a maniac, but we're giving him more money for weapons? Nobody says boo. Right. So we don't ask good questions as a culture. And so the $3,400 that every American contributes to the military enterprise, you know how much we spend on healthcare in this country? Every American contributes $40 to programs, social programs. Education gets $80 from every American. Meanwhile, defense, which is 57% of our spending, and people like to make the argument, well, we got it. No, we don't. We don't have to be in every country in the world with 1,400 bases, with almost 2 million guys deployed to do what? We got bombs now that can make it from here to Japan. Austin, Texas, where we're at right now. We got bombs that we make it from here to Japan in 15 minutes. I don't need to have bases in Japan. And Japan has an army now. And if they don't act right, we know what we're going to do. But we're not doing that anymore. We suddenly became the world's policemen, and we're invading everywhere. We're in 8 wars right now. And I thought Cheeto Jesus was going to get us out of those, right? But he didn't. Oh, you can laugh. That ain't blasphemy.
No. It's just, I can't with you, Cheeto. But no, I mean, I think exactly what was some of that. Where are we investing our money? And there are countries that, again, that we can learn from.
Sure.
And I think that part of us is, instead of us being so prideful and being like, oh, we know everything, we're so great, we need to learn from those different countries. Sure. And some of that, too, is like, yeah, there may be countries that are arming themselves. And I'm not talking about the ones that we are just innately at war with. But to me, when I think about some of those things, what are the reasoning behind that? What are some of, I guess, the collaborations and things that we can do? So I'm going to say this because I used to live in Japan. When I think about healthcare, I'm trying to think when, but I got into an accident. Being in a hospital, taking medicine, having physical therapy, I paid $12.
My buddy broke his arm in England 3 years ago. It was $30.
And I'm just like...
And it was $30 because he was not a citizen.
Are you serious?
And the lady was apologizing. Well, it was $30. He's thinking, okay, and then what? She's like, no, that's it, $30. He's like, oh. She goes, but if you were living here, we wouldn't charge you anything. But you're not a citizen. So it's like right. She felt bad charging the $30. Right. When you bring your arm here, it's like $10,000.
But then you had someone that I think she was from Canada. She came to America to have a baby. It was $30,000. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things that where we invested our money in, where we say that this was important, and if we want to be, sometimes I feel like we're so reactive as a culture,
100%.
And that we're not proactive. We're saying, well, we want to be on trends and we want to be excelling to the future, but what are the things that we're putting in place for us to be able to? Right. And then we get mad when other countries are being successful at it, when we have the opportunity to do it as well.
Well, shit. I mean, after World War II, General George Marshall, responsible for the Marshall Plan. Mm-hmm. Amazing how people kind of just forget this. But after World War II, we had to help England and Germany and Italy and Japan and,
Right.
They're getting the shit bombed out of them. So Marshall comes along, and he's a goddamn general. Maybe he talked to an economics buddy or something.
Yeah.
But he's like, hey, man, if you guys want to rebuild this economy, you're going to have to make education and healthcare free because I'll tell you what, if they got more money to spend, they're going to buy you shit.
Exactly.
And so, and this is an army guy. He's an army guy. I'm sure he went to college. Exactly. I'm sure he went to West Point. He has some numbers. 2 + 2 is 4. But here he comes along, and he's like, all right, we got these team guys, and the team guys are saying, hey, this is what we got to do. And 1948, England has had single-payer healthcare since 1948. 70 years in, we still don't have it. Italy has it. Germany has it. Sweden has it. Finland has it. And
look at their education.
Yeah, goddamn right.
Look at it. I mean, and again, this is not, it's one of these things that sometimes we look at. Like when I was living in Japan, I understand Japan is a collective society and America is an individualistic society. And not saying that we need to change everything about us, but I feel like we need to start giving a shit about each other, and a part of that is like, again, especially when dealing with healthcare, is more like, well, I don't want to have to pay for my neighbor, but then when something happens to my family, I don't know where I'm going to get the money from.
Right.
But if we had changed that and all invested it in a different way, then we wouldn't be having some of these issues that we're having.
You know who's becoming the number 2 payer of medical bills? GoFundMe. Behind Medicare.
What?
People they get sick and they get on a GoFundMe to go raise money because they ain't got any money. And if you ask these questions, okay, for example, you lived in Japan.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a couple questions really quick, but then the point I was going to make is no matter what we say, well, if you don't like it, go back to Japan.
People are going to say that.
Right. Well,
and I can.
Here's a preemptive fuck you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
If you want to turn off, then okay. Our guest is too polite to cuss, but I'm not. Well, I'll give you an example. So guns, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Japan has a population of 140 million people. Mm-hmm. 2016, I think the number I read was they had 10 homicides by gun. 10. We are barely double the size of Japan. We had 30 some odd thousand homicide by gun. Now let's knock off about a good third to half of that for the suicides.
Right.
Because we got 22 vets a day. It's a whole other topic. But
they also have suicides over there too. Like the mental health is real.
So let's just knock it down to about 8,000 gun deaths to be conservative. Mm-hmm. In a country double Japan's size, how do we have 8,000 deaths? They only have 10. They got 10 homicides by gun. We have 8,000 homicides by gun. I'm ruling out suicide. I'm ruling out because when people say the 30,000, they don't include a lot of shit.
Right.
Or they don't exclude a lot of shit. It's always, we have 33,000 homicides by gun or death by gun. You're going, well, let's look at the suicides. Let's look at the vets, the 22 a day that kill themselves, which is terrible.
Right.
But let's just knock that number down to 8,000. In a country of 340 million people, Japan has 140 million people. They have 10. And if you say, hey, let's ask them what they're doing. No, man, you're going to take my guns. If you don't like it, go to Japan. I'm like, dude.
But that's the problem. Like, even like what you're saying too is the problem. It's not a matter of saying, let me take away your right. It's a matter of saying, can we at least look at what other countries are doing and seeing what works and how that could be applicable in America. So again, me living there, being a woman, I felt safe. Like I could walk around at 3:00 in the morning and we're like, okay, I need to go to this place to pay my bill or whatever. Cause like the convenience stores, you can go and pay your bills at any time of the night. And I felt safe. I didn't feel animosity. And the things that we look at, there was different things as far as you had ways of trying to, if it's like doing Tai Chi or doing, for me, riding past temples, there was different ways for me to find that balance and my basic needs were taken care of.
On top of your job.
On top of my job. So it's one of those things that I was just like, I had what I needed. So any other extra money that I have, of course, although student loans did follow me over.
Yeah, they do that.
I was like, crap, I got to pay all these student loans.
They're like STDs.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? They never go away.
They never go away.
Never go away. But again, I was then able to put all the money that I was making outside, like, take out bills and, of course, paying rent and things like that, back into that community. So, again, just even talking, we're not going to get there and talk about, like, food. Like, where I was living, onions were 27 cents. Tofu was 31 cents.
Jeez.
So, all the things that it took me to be healthier that I don't eat here was cheaper.
Right.
Like, it's cheaper for me to buy a cheeseburger and some whatever carbs, whatever I want, than it is for me to get green vegetables, for me to get a salad. That's $8 or $9.
Right.
Because
we don't subsidize those guys. We subsidize the crap food.
Exactly. And over there, you were getting, and maybe it was like that, but I lived like in especially a particular farming area, but I also lived in a very kind of urban area as well. And those things were it was able for me to get what I needed at a cheaper amount. And I felt like over there was more about if I got sick, it is to heal you, to cure you. Whereas I feel like I get sick over here is more to keep you okay until the next thing happens. It's not necessarily like to get rid of stuff, and to each thing is different, but I didn't have to worry about that. I mean, kids go and have education and they're taught English all the way up until 12th grade, so it's one of those things that I'm like, what are we putting and learning about? And police officers were friendly. Shocking. And don't get me wrong, I will say that too. I don't want to placate
we live
anything.
in Austin's like Hobbit land. The cop, I'm from LA. The cops here are super friendly.
Right. They are.
Even if you're doing something
Austin
stupid
credit.
and they stop you, they're kind of going, "Come on, man!"
Right.
Like in LA, they're not. And I'm a white guy technically. They don't give a shit. I mean, and a lot of them are cool. I work with a lot of cops in LA, California. Cool people. Yeah. But when they're pulling you over, they don't know who the hell you are. When I go into the briefing, they see me. Hey, how you doing? But then when they just pull me over randomly, a lot of them ain't so friendly. Here, it's Hobbit land here.
Now, I've had some good experiences. I've also had some experiences where I have had officers call me the N-word. So, like, again, I think that it kind of, I'm just going to say it just depends. But,
it does.
But not but that's not to take away from our men and women that are serving in that capacity that are doing amazing jobs and wonderful.
Sure.
But over there, I didn't have that. I didn't, but it was something weird. I didn't, and I say over here, a lot of times in America, I feel my different identities. I feel like me as a woman, I feel me being black. I feel like all of these different things. And not to say that I didn't feel that to a certain degree. In Japan, I did, but it wasn't the same.
Well, they don't demonize you for it, I don't think.
It wasn't.
I mean, I've been in other countries, they don't demonize you for being different.
Right.
You go to brown countries and you're the white guy, they don't give a shit. As long as you're not an asshole.
Right. Right. And I feel like that's kind of
don't do anything to my mom. It's like,
right.
And you're just cool. I mean, I've been to Cuba, been to a lot of places, and if you it's like scuba diving. You don't touch stuff. You're just visiting.
Right. And so it's some of those things too that when I think about the violence here, I went and walked almost any town in America at 3 o'clock in the morning. You couldn't pay me. So again, it's just we feel like we have to have these things to protect us, but we're not doing anything that stops this kind of cycle from happening over and over again, which is like more guns. And the fact that I used to live in Pittsburgh, and so the fact that I'm hearing about the synagogue, and it was like, oh, you just needed an armed guard. You don't blame the victim. You don't blame the victims. You don't say this is what you needed to have. No, we need to do something to fix that. Now, and I will say, let's look at some disparity too. Those shooters were alive when they made it out.
It's statistically the only. I'll just go ahead and say it. The only white mass shooters that get taken dead are the ones that kill themselves.
Exactly. See, you said what I wasn't going to say as I scratched my head.
No, man. Say it.
Yeah.
I don't care what color you are. To say the truth is it's the truth. Listen. When the South Carolina church kid got in with Dylan Roof and he got arrested,
they gave him a burger.
Burger King. Specifically, they took him through Burger King drive-thru after being arrested without incident. Now, if that was a black kid shooting up a white church,
say it.
What do you think?
Say it.
It ain't groundbreaking, right? It ain't. I'm not breaking. I'm like the Ramones, breaking the same new ground for 20 years. It's like, no, dude. If that kid would have been taken with incident, if not shot, killed, not taken for a fucking hamburger. The Aurora, Colorado guy. I mean, every single white dude that doesn't kill himself. and he gets taken without incident. As long as he has his hands up, it's cool.
Right. And I think that that's something too, and there's so many different pieces within that, right? Because then we'll say, oh, it was definitely mental health and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, for some of that, it may have been, but some of that, it may not have been. That doesn't negate the fact that you shouldn't be having certain policies and things in place to stop this from happening. Right. And just having someone with another gun doesn't mean that that's going to stop it. It's, again, it's like we're placating it. We're just putting a bandage over something that we haven't dug the wound out to actually heal.
See, and then the devil's advocate side, for example, I got one of my groups in LA, one of the largest temples in California, if not the United States. It's called Wilshire Boulevard Temple. And huge synagogue built in the early 1900s. A bunch of movie stars couldn't live in Beverly Hills because they were Jewish, so they started their own thing down Mid-Wilshire District. And this temple's gorgeous. I mean, it's like flat out like Mormon tabernacle stuff. I mean, they film movies there. They make it look like they need a cheap college campus. They go there. Huge temple. And like you go through their wall of fame, it's like every movie star that has ever lived, like Al Jolson and everybody, like worshiped there, right? And died there, and they're buried in the cemetery, whatever. Big ass target, right? And about 10, 12 years ago, I mean, I've had him since 2000. Well, I left California in 2015, but I had him from 2003 to when I left California. But around 2007, 8, they started having armed guards, guys with Glocks and polo shirts and khakis, named Uri and Uzi and Ari. But big corn-fed guys, and they weren't menacing, but they were there, and they had a metal.
And they had to be there.
Yeah, and had a metal detector because it's on Wilshire Boulevard, and in the eastern part of LA, and it's an easy target. It's a big parking lot. It's not hard to get in. I beg your pardon. So, to the devil's advocacy side, we haven't had too many synagogue shootings, thank God, but those guys probably will never have one.
Right.
And if they do, it'll get nipped in the bud at the gate because you got two guys at every entrance with a Glock 9.
Right.
So.
So then feeding off of that too, then, we have those in place, but then it's still not getting at the root of the problem.
Right, I know.
Right? Saying, to your point, the whole, we're not dealing with all these different isms. We're not dealing with anti-Semitic. We're not dealing with racism, sexism, and all these different things. We're not getting to the root of the problem, that there are people with hate that once you put those type of weapons into their arm, they think I can solve what I don't like by doing that.
Sure.
And there's no repercussions. If it is, I go to jail. You know what I'm saying? So it's like all
I get you.
And that's the part to me that's frustrating. I'm not saying that, that particular, synagogue or any other church, they feel like they have to have that. But I hate the fact that we have to have that, or that someone is able to say, well, if you had this would have stopped it. We're not getting to the root of the problem.
No, we're not. Well, I mean, give you an example. So the pipe bomb guy that was mailing all those bombs to like Obama and everybody else. Okay. So the first thing you hear is, it's a conspiracy. The Democrats are just trying to do it before the election. I'm like, okay,
really?
Look, I don't like Democrats either. And honestly, I wouldn't put it past Chuck Schumer. He's a slimeback. I mean, if I found out that it was a plot, I'd be like, yeah, I kind of thought so. But in reality, I was like, you know what, man? There's a lot of people that are hurting, and no one's listening to them. And so if you're hurting, your livelihood got wiped out. And some people, well, they should just pick themselves up by their boots. Well,
I hate that.
If you get rid of listen, you've got 50% of people in this country making under $30,000 a year. Okay, 63% of the people cannot afford a $1,000 emergency. That's called a failed system. 40% of homeless people have a job. So if 50% of working people are making under $30,000 and 40% of homeless people have a job and they can afford a gym membership to take a shower to go to work in the morning, but they're sleeping in their car, maybe we should be addressing that because they're clearly not lazy.
Right.
If unemployment is about 6%, 4%, well then there's 95% of people working. And if half of those people are living in poverty and they're still working 2-3 jobs in some cases, well then maybe we need to ask the question, because one of the things I wanted to ask you about, we're going to wrap up here in a little bit, but they keep talking about the minimum wage. And personally, I think the minimum wage should be $20 an hour.
Heck yeah. And
so when I say that, they're like, why? Well, here's an idea that I think could probably work, because we spend $1.2 trillion on the military. How about we take $200 billion and put that into the Department of Labor? And now if you're so-and-so company and you can only afford $12 an hour, well, you apply for subsidy. So now that cat gets $20 an hour. He's getting taxed more, so there's more revenue coming into the government, so it's going to pay for itself. And then he's putting more money in the economy because people with money spend money. So you save a little bit, go out to dinner a couple times a week with the family, whatever.
And then you're putting the money back into
the economy. Yeah. So It's like, is that something that could be feasible? And also, isn't a lot of our problems that you're talking about coming from folks that aren't being listened to, man?
I think a lot of it's dealing with folks that are not being listened to. And that's why when we first initially met, we were talking about the whole PC. People feel like they can't share what they feel or their experiences because of the fact that they feel like they're trying to compare it to someone else and then feel like, well, my experience is not like this person, so no one wants to hear me. Mm-hmm. And they talked a lot about that, especially during the middle class divide and how that's kind of separating. And then something else I wanted to highlight too when you talk about go back to your bootstraps. It always infuriates me when people say, oh, they should just pull themselves a bootstrap. There has not been, to me, when I look at the history of America, a time where a group of people have done that by themselves. They've either have used forced labor, they've either have done whatever they needed to do in order to accomplish what they're having. But when I hear this, pull yourself by your bootstraps, when that person didn't have to do that, that's bullshit to me. But going back to that,
usually is. I could cite personally quite a few examples, including myself. So, we all get help every now and then.
Right. Yeah. And so, going to that point too, I think that it is. I think that when we, again, to me, it's going back to those Maslow's, I wouldn't say the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to where if basic needs are not being met, then this is when you're going to have these things happening into our communities. Mm-hmm. If people don't have shelter, if people don't have clothes, if people don't have all the necessities they need in order to function as an everyday citizen and to grow and to do things, then you're going to have this crime there. And that's not saying that's like the exception of crime that's coming from different areas, just people just being malicious, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about the crime that's stemming from not having what they need, or it's easier for me to be able to get my voice heard by having negative attention, or to be able to get my voice heard by taking from someone else because I don't have enough, or it's easier for me to get more, to make more than I would by making a job. So it's easier for me to rob you or to steal from you or whatever. If we're not looking at the root of it, like what you're talking about too, then yeah, we're having this problem. I think part of it is not just, I think $20, yeah, that would just be nice, but we also need some more things. How are we training our citizens to be able to grow for the future? And we're not.
No, we still listen. When I was a kid, by my 10th reunion in 1991, there's a lot of guys. I mean, I grew up in South Central, so not everybody tries college. Right? I mean, I got dragged to college kicking and screaming. I didn't even take the SAT. I wasn't going to go. I'm like, fuck that. I ain't going to go. My friends said I was going to hook me up with a job at Pac Bell, driving around a little cart collecting change out of the phone booth for like $10 an hour. And then maybe I could work my way up to something like he did. Because back in the day, you didn't need to go to college.
Right.
He ended up being like a VP of something, marketing or sales. He was I started off right out of high school and just driving a little cart and collecting coins. And then he went into sales. And he became a VP. But now you need a job just to get a sales gig, right? So all that to say that, so by my 10-year reunion, the guys that didn't go to school, but they had metal, they had wood, they had auto, They had good paying jobs, man. They had good paying union gigs, and this is when Southern California still had jobs. And quite a few of my friends were working on the movie sets, building stuff. They went their uncle was in the union, and they could swing a hammer, and they could saw, and they could do that stuff. And by the time they were 18, they knew how to do all this stuff. And the uncle was like, "Hey, man, I'll get you a union." Got him a union card, got him insurance. They're putting kids through school, and wife was working too. So 2 cars, vacations. They had an economy, right? They had right. We got rid of that stuff. Department of Education. Since it used to be a subset, I believe, of the Surgeon General's office, it was not its own thing. In 1981, Reagan made it a department, the Secretary of Education, who we now have, what's her face? But it's been a steady decline in education since we started the Department of Education. And now we're talking about taking more money out of schools and making vouchers and all this kind of crap. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute, man. Then you don't have a lower common denominator. You don't have a K through 12 equal education. Right.
And you don't. And then it's particularly that we're taking also, not only are we just hurting education as a whole in certain programs, but we're also taking out programs because like we're saying like, oh, art doesn't need to be there. Music doesn't need to be there. Excuse me? Like just because a person can take a music class, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go on to be a musician. And if they do, that's amazing. But they don't. Those are still traits and characteristics that will help them no matter the field that they're in. To your point, for me, it's always going to be, for me, looking at education again, it doesn't have to come by way of a college degree, but it needs to be something in a way that we're teaching our citizens to be ready for the future.
It's all science and no philosophy.
Right.
It's all science and no philosophy. And I'm sorry, it's like remember when I had philosophy class in college, this one guy's like, is this going to be on the test? I'm like, no, maybe not, dumbass, but it'll make you more interesting at a cocktail party.
Right.
Fucking idiot. It's like, I don't need to know this. And this is like the not need to know.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like that not need to know. It's like people have this pride of not needing to know, like this this bias against intellectualism. Oh, what are you, one of those like smarty guys? I'm like, oh, fuck you, man. I read a paper, okay? I was like, why don't you know this? If I know it, and I got the same internet you got, and I got the same books you got, and the same library you got,
right.
Then how come you don't know? Because you don't give a shit.
Right. And my thing is that when I say that too, particularly when we're looking at companies and things, and we have got more as far as staffing, talent acquisition, we've got more into about networking, right? We're like telling everyone, you need a network, you need a network, you need a network. But if you don't have anything to be able to talk about, discuss, how are you networking?
They're called boring people. Right? This is seriously. They're called boring people. You've been in those networking events, guys. Like, I know some people. Like, God, I mean, there's a couple of guys. I like them enough. For business contacts. I get lunch with them like once a year because I know how it's going to go. It's going to be the longest ass lunch of my life, and I just don't hate them, so they're tolerable. So I go. Maybe something will come out of it. But I got to listen to just the drone. And there's nothing going on. And there's no worldview. There's no point of view.
Right.
There's nothing, so like, that's called boring people.
Right. And it's called, exactly. And like being able to have something to talk about. And I would love too, like for us to be able to look at even sending people to be able to do, I mean, we have that a lot in colleges, and also upper level companies will do that as well. But being able to say high school students, well, some high school students, particularly if you're private, but being able to send people to different countries to be able to like explore and to learn, particularly at a younger age.
Sure.
And so that way they can have that kind of perspective of what it's like to be a global citizen. What is it like to care for each other? What is it like what is this country doing right? What is this country doing wrong? Vice versa. We need to do that. We
don't have enough. I mean, we're going to start wrapping every couple minutes.
Okay,
No, that's cool. Man. We don't have enough empathy, see.
But I say that to I'm gonna put this right now
because you went to Japan, see, so
right.
you get it. See, like people that have traveled understand the bigger picture, and they bring the bigger picture to the States. Well, how come we can't do it?
And it's interesting too, especially as we talk about that. I always say you can do anything to anyone the moment you stop seeing their humanness.
Sure.
You can do anything to anyone.
Oldest playbook in the world.
Right? And so it's one of those things, like, to me, to your point, like, we don't have empathy. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we need to work on. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny, too. I'm going to tell this little quick thing right quick. But for me, when I came back from Japan, I had the hardest time finding employment. Mm-hmm. As far as like trying to tell my story of, hey, like I was abroad internationally, I brought these things back, and where I was living at the time, I won't say because it's a little backwards area, just kept telling me like, no, why would you go to Japan? I literally had someone tell me in an interview one time, like, we don't think that was the best decision for you to have went to Japan.
Oh, I heard that before. Not Japan, but other countries.
Like and I'm just like, what? I thought this was.
Why were you there?
Right, yeah. Right. Why were you there? And that doesn't make sense. And the minute that I started applying for jobs outside of my home state was the minute that I had people saying, oh, this is amazing. You can bring this fresh perspective. Sure. And the job that I did have back in my home state was really thanks to a boss that got that and was just like, I know you're overqualified, but I want you anyway. Mm-hmm.
Which is a way better answer than why were you there?
Right. Right.
I can't pay what you're worth, but hey, I like you. Right. I need you. Right. If you'll take the money.
And what did I do? I took it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I think that to sum all that up is really being able to broaden our perspectives, having more empathy, and then looking at our country as a whole moving forward. What do we need to do? And not just settle for what we've said in the past as being the answer. Like, oh, we need more guns for this, or oh, we need more military. No, something needs to be different. What is that, the definition? What is it, of insanity?
Oh, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, listen, on that cheery note, show's called The Bitter Truth, Not Big Wet Kiss. So, neener. My guest has been Simone. And we're going to start wrapping up here. But again, patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. You can become a bitter pill. And, we've got some great guests coming on in the next handful of weeks here. Look for some blog posts on the Patreon site. I always post an essay here and there. And really appreciate the ears. And as always, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.